Okay, here we go. Reflection number two on chapters 2 and 3. Trying to cruise through these chapters to catch up. There's a little bit more material here. Chapter 2 is about the same length. Chapter 3 is a little bit longer. So, what I did is I just picked out some exercises and some reflections and some questions from the book, and just picked out some things that I thought were relevant and new information to me, and just stuff that I wanted to elaborate on a little bit more. So, the first thing I wanted to talk about is the exercise question that's on page 39 that goes with the case report of Sam. So the exercise question says, explore your thoughts about Sam's chosen path. Do you have value judgments about his path? Given the importance of employment and its relation to post-school success, does your personal experience provide students with enough knowledge about job options? And what would you need to improve your knowledge of the current workplace for entry-level employment and post-school options? So I thought this case report was quite interesting. It's probably pretty similar to a lot of students, or a lot of students' experiences, but just a few things that I highlighted. It says specifically the school staff viewed him as hostile and possibly a threat to school safety. I thought that was really interesting. At the beginning, it talks about how he is quiet, he's removed, he's depressed, he doesn't talk a lot. His reading levels are low and stuff, but it doesn't really talk about him being violent or having outbursts or anything like that. So just the fact that at the end of the first paragraph it says the school staff viewed him as hostile and a threat to school safety already shows me that maybe the school and some of the administrators have their heads in the wrong place when it comes to this student. So I see that by 12th grade, he was feeling better about himself and he had the confidence that he needed to work, and he wanted to work, and he didn't want to do additional training. Yeah, I just found it really interesting that, I know it's just a case study, but that the transition planning specialist realized that, really it was the team's ideas and not Sam's ideas. And I can't stress the importance enough of involving students in making goals, or obviously, I said in my last reflection, involving them with IEP meetings is great, and every situation is different, but if you can involve the kids in their future and ideas and what they want to do with their lives, it's up to them. They're the ones that have to live it. It's not us. We want to be there to help and be a resource, but not to push them in any sort of direction or make them feel like they have to do something. They can make choices on their own. They're still human beings and still adults. So I don't know. I think that kind of goes into my next question, or the next thing I wanted to address, which is the concept of self-determination, which definitely is involved in Sam's case for sure. On the top of page 39, it says, because of this transition planning relationship, the transition planning specialist saw the essence of self-determination. So, it shows you towards the end that they saw the self-determination and what they wanted, and maybe they weren't helping pull that out, or by asking him enough. So I just found that to be interesting. So if you go back to page 34 and 35, actually in 36 too, but mainly 34 and 35, it talks about self-determination and how to develop it, and what self-determination is. So real quick, self-determination theory is a theory involving the development of intrinsic motivation and the problem of amotivation. In self-determination theory, it is posited that if the activity is not integrated into the person's sense of self, motivation does not occur. Just a few paragraphs below, I highlighted, when goal accomplishment is supported, the individual develops an increase in self-determined action. So in other words, when the social context, such as the transition planning process, supports autonomy or independence and stuff, the level of people's identified and integration motivation will increase. So it is literally telling us if we involve the students in the planning process and we support their individualism and what they want to do with their life that the level of motivation increases. And how huge is that? And how simple of a concept is that to do that I don't feel like enough of us as teachers are doing, but especially when it comes to transition planning and that student is going to go off on their own and be a lot more individual and a lot more autonomy, you need to provide that. So, and then on page 35 it talks about parents and the primary role they play in autonomy or not. Found it very interesting that it's clearly if parents support autonomy in their adolescent, the motivation levels can be great, and if not, you can really see that motivation be extremely low if parents aren't supporting their individualism and supporting their self-determination. And the last thing on 35, right below the dependence to independence, I highlighted because I found this interesting. The child has no control over any of the contents of the IEP, nor does the child have to say in what he or she is expected to do. During transition planning, the approach is expected to change, and for the first time, young persons with disabilities are asked what they want to do. When the student is included in the IEP decisions, there is now an opportunity for the child to develop a sense of volition by internal values or what they think instead of through pressure or what the adults think. So once again, they haven't been involved in their IEPs for so many years. Most likely, now is the time to get them involved, and it's a really key component to get them involved now. Let's see, what else? Exercise question 5. So if you go to page 62, I'm going to flip real quick. There was an important question that I wanted to address. And that question says, most parents of students with disabilities worry about social experiences. How can you work with a parent to increase options for after-school activities? Develop an after-school activity designed for students with moderate intellectual disabilities. So really, once again, I would try to talk to the student and try to see what their interests are. I do not want to push any sort of after-school activity or social experience that they're not going to find relevant or they're not going to find interesting to them because they're not going to get anything out of it. So if I'm able to work with the parent to find out what the student would like to do, and if there isn't a club for that or there isn't a program, to look outside of the school for the program or to create a club. How great would it be to have a student create a dominoes club or a Pokemon club or what, I don't know, any sort of idea that they can really maybe take a hold of and bring in some people that they didn't know had common interests and make some new friends. And then as for developing an after school program, I think just for like a social experience, map out and plan a bike ride with some students. So get a group of students together, pull up Google Maps, show them the least traffic, most sidewalks area, best bike route that we can get, and have a destination of ice cream or something like that. So there's kind of a goal, and they had to do their research and write out directions and figure out the best way, and they have to remember their bike or their helmet or whatever they're bringing. I could see that being kind of an independent, cool group project, but and also give them social experience. They got to go purchase something. They have to use money, all sorts of things within that. And then 2 ideas that I found interesting or new to me in these chapters was if you go to page 49, there's the idea of parent training, which I just thought was really interesting. The fact that, there's more than just like working with the parent. There's really, you can, if a parent's struggling or confused or whatever, there's really a lot of ways to kind of train them to understand the best ways of working through an IEP, understand ways of working with their student or their child. But I just thought like the idea of parent training was interesting. And as teachers, who know more about some of these diagnoses. We are really, it's kind of part of our job to train our parents, not only about the diagnosis and their student, because we work with them a lot, but just working them through this process of the IEP and having a student with a disability, because we know a lot of that information and we can really be good trainers for the parents. So just that idea of parent training I thought was interesting. And lastly, on page 67, I was reading and I thought this was really interesting too. It says the school must invite the student to the IEP meeting by law, but it is ultimately up to the parent's choice. So I kind of knew this already, but I just found it interesting that the school absolutely has to ask for the student to come to the meeting, but really the parent can just say nope, 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 and there's not a lot of pushback. So I just found it interesting that the parents have so much control over if the student is able to come when maybe the teacher would think it would be good, and the parent can still deny and say, I don't want my student here. So just that idea that the schools are by law have to ask, but then the parent can just say, nope, I don't want them, was just an interesting concept to me. So those are kind of the main ideas I pulled out of, not the main ideas, but what was interesting and relevant to me. Hope that works for my reflection too. And I will keep cruising along on my readings, and reflection 3 will be coming soon. Thanks.